Hey all, I'm Kilkidden and welcome to Breaking on the Daily, where today we have a new strain of coronavirus, or the strain of coronavirus. Deborah Birx has traveled during Thanksgiving in violation of her COVID advocacy, and Biden's niece avoids jail again. All this and more on Breaking on the Daily. Now let's start with that COVID strain. Now, there has been a new strain of coronavirus in Britain that has appeared and has taken over the current dominant, and has, I think, become the dominant strain in Britain as of this week. Now, there was a question as to whether this is actually a new strain or just a slight change in amino acids. There's a number of things going on, but this all coincides with many countries, much of which being within the EU, which I think it might have something more to do with, rather than this whole COVID thing, it probably has more to do with the EU and Brexit and all that sort of stuff. It's interesting because it is India, Poland, Switzerland, Russia, Hong Kong who have suspended travel, and I think France is added to that. So, okay. And then there's also France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Austria, Ireland, Belgium, Israel, and Canada. So a lot of European countries, but also a lot of different other countries as well, though I think most of them are European countries that have reduced travel. And I'm not so sure that this has to do with COVID, but it may have something more to do with the whole Brexit thing, because what the EU is going to try and do over the next few years with Brexit and all that, and, assuming that Biden does get appointed to a president, and assuming that happens, maybe the US will too, is they're going to try and isolate the UK in anticipation of a new referendum to rejoin the EU. That's their plan. They don't want to let Britain out, and obviously that's not a set in stone thing. You shouldn't be blackmailed on these things, especially since none of this has been set in stone. It's all in the future. It's certainly not in the past, where things are truly set in stone. But it's interesting, this new COVID strain, because they're saying it's more transmissive, and we don't know whether that affects the death rate of it at all, or whether it's less lethal or whatever. I suspect it likely is, if it's even substantially more transmissive. It's questionable, because there's a lot of mixed signals going around, where some doctors are saying this is a completely new strain, and others saying, well, essentially all this is a slight amino acid change, and it's not going to make a huge difference. People are talking about how there may be limitations on the vaccine working, and then there are other people who are saying, no, it's not genetically different enough to do that, and it's yet to be seen as to all of these things. We're going to have to wait a few weeks at least to see really where this is all going. But assuming this is a completely new strain of which there is no vaccine, can you justify shutting down the economy for another year based on that? My answer would be no. And it should be all of your answers too. The restrictions are absolutely not viable or even reasonable at this point. And, in response to all this, just this morning, the stocks and oil futures and a lot of things have dropped in response to not only this, but other COVID-19 restrictions coming back into play. But if you were to see it in the media's perspective, and this isn't happening on the Wall Street Journal, where I'm taking this particular story, but if you go to other news outlets, one's less focused on business and less cognizant, thus, of the actual reasoning for why certain market things are happening. Go to a place like Newsweek or other places like that, more left-leaning and and less business-oriented places, unlike the Wall Street Journal, you're going to see a lot of people say, because of coronavirus. And you've seen this a lot of the time about a whole bunch of stories with regard to the economics of what has happened in the wake of coronavirus, or more accurately, the coronavirus restrictions. Most people don't make the distinction between those two things, when there is a clear distinction. Because though viruses can affect economic production and economic output on their own, even without restrictions. The restrictions that have been put on our economies in the past year have been a monumentally large portion of the actual results of the resultant downturn. And this is almost undisputed. It at least very much should be undisputed, and even by these media organizations which want to portray it as something other than what it is. But of course, you're going to see in lots of headlines and lots of places that are trying to actually deceive you into believing something that they don't even believe. You're going to see them say coronavirus, or they're going to say the virus, or as the pandemic spreads. They're going to use all of these language tricks to not necessarily directly blame coronavirus, but make it seem like they're directly blaming coronavirus in the headline. And because so many people online, on the internet, on places like Twitter particularly, do not read any more than headlines, and do not look into any of the statistics they are actually giving you, there's almost no actual fact-checking on this front, or more accurately, I would say, format checking. And you see this all over the place. It doesn't just happen with regard to the economic numbers and all of that sort of stuff. It also happens with things like mass studies. So I've seen a study going around that has become very popular as of recent in the online space about coronavirus and masks. And this is an interesting study because what it tries to say is it tries to say that without masks, Germany would have had, I think it was 45 or 60. I think it was actually 65%. I don't remember the exact numbers. I'll try and find the study and put the link in the description. And everyone has been using this as evidence that masks work. But here's the problem with that study. And it's something which is clear to anyone who's actually read it and understands the underlying mechanism through which they created their numbers. And created their numbers is an accurate terminology rather than found in this case. Is that this study takes the normal numbers of Germany. And what they do is they put it through a complicated equation with a bunch of factors and weights and all of these sorts of things to jumble up the statistics and invent a counterfactual to compare against. That's what this study does. And in terms of how they got the 65% number, that's what they put into the equation, or at least, maybe not directly, but it's what they put in verbatim in order to get that number. Because they were weighting these as factors in order to create their counterfactual. They're creating a set of statistics out of whole cloth. Because what they're using is they're taking real statistics, putting it through essentially a machine, through a computer, and saying, change all of these variables and change them at these rates, and they affected at this, and they do all these sort of complicated things to obfuscate the fact that their counterfactual is completely it is a completely pseudoscientific number. It has nothing to do with science. And this goes back to sort of the thing I've been harping on for a very long time about computer models, because this is essentially the same thing. And it's telling, by the way, that this modeling system that they're particularly using, because I did look into what particular model they were using, is used in places in which there is much political bias involved, and you can pay to get any result on any from any study in these fields. I think it was economics, health policy, and not healthcare, by the way, not like medical studies, health policy, as in like political policy, and I think it was like essentially money management and like financial policy. It was all about governmental policies, and it's this model is essentially a way for any government entity to justify any of its policies that it wants through paying people to use this model in a study to say, look, our model did this, to create a counterfactual out of whole cloth to say, look, if we didn't do this, then this would have happened. I think it's also used in criminology. So it's one of the most... It's very telling that it's only used in these fields. It's not used in other fields. It's not used in places outside of government policy. But this gets thrown around as if it's the silver bullet of of mass studies, and it proves that masks are perfectly viable and, of course, unquestionable. It's obviously not true. It's complete nonsense. But anyway, on to our next story, and the $600 stimulus check has been passed by Congress, and, well, no one likes it. Essentially, you have a bunch of people saying it's not enough, you should be spending more money, government. Oh, man. It's so funny to see these people who are insistent that we should destroy the economy in order to satiate their fears, completely irrational fears over a virus which, to many of them, is not dangerous in the slightest. I mean, you have a lot of people like AOC, like a lot of younger people, a lot of younger millennials and Gen Zers and all that, being completely completely paranoid about the coronavirus, despite the fact that their demographic specifically is not at risk of it. It is so silly to see how many people who are in my age group just completely bend the knee and be completely unwilling to rebel at all, or do anything of the sort, or even look into the numbers themselves to find out that they are at almost no risk of actually having any serious consequences from this disease. It is so infuriating to see that, and it's been a very consistent measure, and this is just another example of it, because the government spending more is not going to save the economy. The government spending more and giving people a bunch of money that doesn't have any value because it's all been newly printed. It's all newly printed money. Literally, I think it was a fourth of all of the U.S. currency ever printed has been printed in the last year. So essentially, your currency, your U.S. dollar, has been devalued by at least a fourth. I might be wrong on the numbers there. It might be a different equation. It might be even more, because a lot of that currency that has been printed may not even be in circulation anymore. But a fourth of the currency that has ever been printed of the US dollar has been printed this year. That is ridiculous. We're getting into hyperinflation levels there. That is hyperinflation. No, that's not just getting into hyperinflation. That is hyperinflation. The US dollar has been devalued over this year by ridiculous amounts. Ridiculous amounts. And that's not going to be solved. Your economy is not going to be fixed by printing more. All right? This stimulus bill is $900 billion. $900 billion. And that's not all going into the $600 checks, because you know what you have to do? You have to pay all the administrators in the government. You have to pay all the people who are the administrators of the administrators. You have to pay all of the bureaucracy before a single dollar gets into that stimulus package. Government is corrupt. And that is obvious. I don't know why I have to say that. Government is inefficient. This is obvious. I don't know why I have to say that. Government, when trying to give you money, will go through everyone else before it ever gets to you. I don't know why I have to say that. But obviously I do, because so many people are like, this isn't enough. You should be giving us more money. As if that's going to solve anything. More worthless money. Yay. A lot of this is newly printed money. Newly printed. On top of all the money that we've printed this year. Jeez. It's just so infuriating. And coming back to this theme again, of many, many people, my age in particular, who are simply unwilling to do anything for their own selves, who are simply unwilling to become the sovereign of their own life. You need to take control of your life. Because here's the fact of the matter. Freedom is an attitude. Being free, being sovereign over your own life is an attitude. I am sovereign over my own life, at least broadly. Because if the government told me to stay in my house, I wouldn't. I would do exactly what I normally do. And I just do it. Because they don't have power over me. They don't have power, particularly over my mentality. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that should be the attitude of everyone. That should be the attitude of you. That should be the attitude of all of your friends, all of your friend group, all of your family. That should be your attitude in all of life. Is I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to accomplish the things I'm going to accomplish. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to do those things with right purpose, and I'm going to do those things with good intent, with good heart. I'm going to do those things with to good ends, to in order to fulfill certain goals. That should be your attitude. And where in that does government come into play? Where in that do you say, okay, I'm also going to capitulate to the government on everything? Am I saying capitulate to the government on nothing? No. Because frankly, there is a level of government restriction that I'm willing to put up with. All right? I'm willing to put up with the speed limit, at least partially. I'm willing to put up with a lot of the road limits and road signs and all of that sort of stuff. I'm perfectly willing to put up with that. Because it's something I'm willing to do. But don't put up with things that you would otherwise be unwilling to do because the government is telling you that. You shouldn't be willing to put up with being locked in your home by the government if you wouldn't be willing to be locked up in your home under any other circumstances. Because that government that's locking you in your home and preventing you from actually accomplishing anything and creating the society upon which they stand is not legitimate. Because that government is specifically destroying the society that exists. On to more examples of how just ridiculous the attitudes with regard to coronavirus, and particularly among my age demographic, have become. There have been many examples of many people showing you exactly what coronavirus restrictions are. And this is just another example. Deborah Birx has traveled and visits her family during Thanksgiving. And she did, during Thanksgiving. And if you're going to take the AP, the story that I specifically took for this example, they use this to spin, saying it highlights the pandemic safety perils. But that's not what it highlights. You've seen a lot of people, even after they've seen the charade politics that has been the coronavirus restrictions, and have seen it over and over again, where all of these people who have been advocating for these things and are in fact the source of a lot of these policies. Deborah Birx is a good example. Just completely ignore the restrictions that they put in place, that they were advocating for, because it is not convenient to them. You have seen them completely ignore them. You have seen them over and over and over again show you exactly what is happening. Exactly how much you should care. Because you should not care any more than Deborah Birx does. Now, if I said that a week ago, if I said that before this came out, everyone would be like, okay, that's not really a controversial opinion. She seems to be fairly concerned about it. And you know, she's not insane. She's not advocating for lockdowns every day. Or at least I don't think so. I think Deborah Birx was one of the more reasonable scientists, though she was advocating for certain things like, you know, Thanksgiving, canceling Thanksgiving, which is something that she specifically advocated for, by the way. But now, people would say, oh, outrageous. You should take this much more seriously. Like me. Oh, really? How serious do you take it? Because when I walk around, and, you know, over the weekend, I went to a Tuacahn play. And for those who don't know what that is, down here in southern Utah, we have essentially a playhouse, a very, very large playhouse. It contributes a lot to tourism down here. It's called Tuacahn. So my family and I went to see the Nativity. And they require masks, or at least ostensibly they require masks. As I continue the story, you'll understand more what I'm talking about. But as I look around, and this is not an uncommon sight, As I look around, I'd say at least 50% of the people are wearing the mask wrong. Or are wearing a one-ply mask that doesn't do anything, according to all science, including pro-mask studies. Or are wearing visibly dirty masks, or have their mask completely down, like that. Just like on their neck. Or wearing razor gaiters, which don't do anything. All these people around me are signaling to the other people around them, and to the people who do legitimately freak out about this sort of stuff, that they care. Yeah, I'm totally pro-mask as I wear the mask under my mouth. I'm totally pro-mask as I take a mask that I've been wearing for weeks out of my pocket and put it on my face. I'm totally pro-mask as I take out a razor gaiter that is one ply and put it on my face, or some other mask of that sort. Or I put on the special breathable masks. It's such a silly thing. But I look around, and no, they don't require masks. They don't. They don't require that you actually take the pandemic seriously. What they require is that you show that you take the pandemic seriously without actually taking it seriously. So you know what I did? Pretty much as soon as I sat down, and I was in the stands, I took off the mask entirely. I put it on beforehand. I had actually walked in without a mask, and I was told to put it on. And in general, my rule is that if I am told to put on a mask, I will, because I don't want to cause a scene. And frankly, it's not worth my time to deal with these sorts of Karens. But as soon as I got into the actual stadium area, I took off the mask. And not a single person throughout that entire area in which it was fairly packed. It was, regardless, we were in the same area for like an hour. It wouldn't have mattered anyway whether I was wearing a mask or not, frankly, even through the pro-mask study lens. No one mentioned a thing. Not a single person. No one cared. Not a single person. I was walking out with a bunch of people, right, shoulder to shoulder, apparently, essentially, and no one cared. I saw a few other people who were also not wearing masks, and I respect them. I saw a lot of people wearing masks improperly. Once, like I said, probably potentially over 50%. I couldn't say for sure for a surety because, well, frankly, I just don't know. But probably around 50% at least wearing the mask improperly, and thus making it completely worthless. But no one cared. No one did. And you know what? That's my experience. My experience is that most people who aren't like placed at doors and specifically told, okay, tell people who aren't wearing masks to put stuff on, don't care. And if you're walking out, those people don't even care. Try this, for example. If your Walmart's open, walk in with a mask, take it off. And take it off immediately as soon as you get in. No one will care. Or at least the vast majority will not care, and particularly will not care enough to actually tell you off about it. All right? And once you walk out the door, the people at the door aren't going to care either. I mean, I think Costco is actually the only example of this, because they're actually super annoying about it. Like, really annoying about it. But other than Costco, no one cares. No one cares at all. Because the fact of the matter is, the masks, the lockdowns, social distancing, all of that, it's just a charade. All of it is charade politics. All of it is we put on this show, we within our minds create this idea that if we put on this show, everything will be fine. Everything's under control. When the fact of the matter is, it isn't. Pandemics aren't under control. That's what makes them pandemics. Diseases aren't under your control. That's what makes them diseases. If diseases were under control, a substantially less amount of people would die every year. Because diseases aren't under control. And they never are. They never will be. But we like to pretend they are. And the masks help us pretend. Seeing someone wear something on their face, visible, that you can see, makes a lot of these people think like, yeah, they're doing their part. That's what they think. Truly. That's what they think. And that's all they think. It's all a charade. All of it. It's all show play. None of it has anything to do with science or actual pandemic prevention. None of it has anything to do. It doesn't have anything to do with anything like that. All it has to do is with you and I playing their game and playing in their show. That's all it has to do. And man, I took a long time on that one. Like that COVID section was about as long as my normal videos. Jeez. And anyway, we move on. And the IMF proposing tracking your web history to determine credit scores. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because becoming more and more like China is a good thing. You know, this is another example of this sort of thing. They want you to play. They want you to do this sort of social play. I mean, this is a terrible idea in a lot of ways. I mean, it's just, why? Why are you proposing this? They say, well, if this is done, we can conceptualize a future where banks are more open with their money. Oh yeah, because that's what it will be used for. It's not like these banks that are, by the way, government subsidized, are just going to say, you know, I would give you this loan, but you like having fun on the internet too much. You spent too much time on 4chan. You might be one of those Kekistani folk. You know. You might have unsavory political views. That's what it's going to be used for, okay? It's not going to be used to give more people more money. That's not what's going to happen. Also, people's social media personalities are not indicative of their ability to use money properly. Let's just put that in crystal clarity. It's not true. No. Some of the most financially responsible and lucrative people, Elon Musk, on the internet just looks like a freaking every other internet troll. He spends a lot of his time just trolling people and memeing and crap. Does that let me ask you, IMF, does that bode well for whether he should be loaned to or bad or doesn't it? Like what? No, that's just complete nonsense. Man, this video is going to be long because we have another doozy. And, you know, that's where I'm going to leave that story off. Because we're seriously running out of time. Biden's niece, who was previously arrested, who avoided jail after stealing $100,000, avoids jail again in a DUI case. Oh my gosh. The Biden crime family. You know, I've never been a huge fan of that sort of conspiracy theory. But, you know, in this case, you know, specifically with the Bidens, I think it's just irrefutable at this point. Because here's the thing. Carolina Biden is not the only Biden who has been arrested and gotten away with like, illicit drugs, other nascent crimes and felonies. This sort of thing has happened 9 times. 9. With different people. Hunter has been involved. I mean, obviously. The guy's been on cocaine for like half of his life. I can't imagine that he never got caught. I mean, he's been on video doing it. So, the fact that he hasn't gone to jail for that sort of stuff is a wonder to me. An absolute wonder to me. But it's not just her. It's just 9 of them. It's been 9 times. Oh my gosh. And they say, there's no evidence that Joe Biden actually was, you know, like directly involved in preventing this prosecution from happening. But it's just, oh my gosh. Yeah, the Bidens are a crime family. The Bidens are a crime family. And I can't wait to see when Hunter Biden gets a special counsel assigned to him and then Joe Biden has to deal with that for 3 years, and $25 million gets spent in an investigation that eventually gets him impeached. Oh, that would be fun. Oh my gosh. If that's Trump's parting shot, assuming nothing happens on January 6th that gets Trump in somehow, assuming Biden gets in, assuming Biden gets rigged in there, and assuming Biden is appointed president, he's not elected, by the way. Hashtag appointed, not elected, by the way. Use a hashtag. It would be very funny for me. Oh man, I'm getting my inner sticks out. Yeah, maybe we should stop that. But man, I would be so happy if there's a special counsel investigation into the Hunter Biden story. I'd be so happy. I would laugh and I would laugh and I would laugh. I would laugh so long. It would be so funny. It'd be so funny, especially since there'd probably be something to be found there. I mean, there's already been things that have been found, but even more. There might actually Hunter Biden might get prosecuted. Oh, wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't it be fun if we found out that Joe Biden was directly involved in all this sort of stuff? Oh. Because, man, the Bidens are corrupt. I mean, they've been corrupt for years. They've been corrupt for decades at this point. Because of Joe Biden, I mean, it doesn't just go for his kids and nieces and stuff. Jim Biden's also corrupt. It's just been a thing for such a long time. How else do you expect Joe Biden to become as rich as he has become? Because people say, he released a tax returns. But if you actually looked into his tax returns, there's a lot of money there that's just undisclosed. that they don't actually disclose the origin of. That are just like, yeah, we have this money, but we won't tell you where we got it or how we got it. It's very funny. It's very funny, and I hope of hopes, really, I really hope that there's a special counsel investigation to Hunter Biden and his illicit deals with China and Russia. It'd be very, very funny. But I think that's where I'm going to leave you today. This has been a long one. I think I'm over 30 minutes. And, that's where I'm going to leave you. This has been Breaking on the Daily. I'm Kel Kidman, and I'm out.